Hey everybody, welcome back. It's Coach Jason. So last video I talked about kind of volume increasing, how to do it no matter what kind of events you're training for, and the importance of it, and how it kind of impacts your ability to improve and stay healthy, and its impact on your training as well. Excuse me. Today I want to talk about another important component of training. It's the long run, and again, whether you're training for the marathon, whether you're training for the 800 meters, it doesn't matter. The marathon, the long run is important, okay? And there's a lot of different ways that it serves a significant balance, okay? Number one, it's one of the bigger contributors to the aerobic development, to your aerobic foundation, okay? It's one of the biggest factors that helps enhance it, okay? But there's also a lot of other factors too. Let's think about it this way. Let's say you're training for a 5K and you're at 50 miles per week. And this is kind of how I just want to lay out the math. If I'm a proponent of about 20% of the weekly volume being the long run. So if you're at 50 miles a week, it's about a 10-mile long run. If you're at 60, it's about 12. If you're at 70, it's about 14. Now, it depends on what you're training for. 5K, 10K. You could be training for the marathon. It's a little bit of a different story. The long run's got to be a little bit more significant, and that's going to be one of the most important runs. But in terms of getting the long run up to maybe 20 miles, which is an important threshold, I don't recommend doing it until you're running at least 60 miles per week, which makes it about a third of your weekly volume, and over 20%, but it's still nevertheless an important component of the training. Now, with regards to marathon training, there are other things that come into play too. Fueling. Fueling is an important component because there are fueling stations in the marathon, and it's important to kind of practice, whether it be just some fluids or something, every 5K, every 5 miles, or whatever it is. Practicing fueling is important. And not waiting until marathon day to try it. Doing it prior to, if you can. Whether it be a fuel belt and taking some fluids during your run and learning how to do it without stopping. Is another important component. But the other component with regards to marathon training is simulation. And what do I mean by that? Let's say I'm going to take Chicago and New York because they're different. New York City Marathon is completely rolling, 26.2 miles. It's one of the more difficult and challenging marathons you could ever run. But it's one of the most awesome marathons too. But the fact is, there's a lot of hills, short and long. And the long run should be kind of set up accordingly, meaning, the majority of your long run should be over rolling terrain to help simulate not only the gradual up and down pounding of the legs, but the fluctuation in pace too. It's much more difficult if you have a goal of, let's say, 3:30, which is 8 minutes per mile. It's a little bit more of a challenge to lock into any kind of pace over a rolling area. Particularly since, there might be short hills here, long hills here. They're all different. And the rhythm is always going to be changing. Now, so obviously training so you can do runs and workouts in that environment is very, very important. Okay? On the flip side, if it's Chicago, which is pancake flat, doing long runs in a manner that helps and just allows you to lock into your prescribed pace ranges for that time, based on your current fitness, allows you to make sure that you're running easy days, when you're easy on easy days, steady on steady days, and simulating the marathon, running marathon pace on certain days as well. And being able to stay in those pace ranges. Okay, and it's important to stay in those pace ranges as well, based on your current fitness, to make sure you're not crossing the line from aerobic to anaerobic. That's more for kind of workouts and tempo and threshold stuff like that, but it's still nevertheless important. Okay, training at your current fitness will help you get to the point where you can achieve your goal. Now, other things come into play too. Long runs, and this kind of applies to everybody. The fatigue factor comes in, and then it can start affecting your form, your posture, your efficiency, and energy conservation is very important for long runs and especially stuff like a marathon. Staying as relaxed and efficient as possible. And that's where speed development comes into play. That's where strength training comes into play. Upper body and lower body. They're all a complement to each other. That's where a good flexibility routine is important too, to make sure that you're essentially spraying WD-40 on your joints, making sure that they're loose and ready for activity, and minimizing the fatigue factor. So take a look in the description down below. I have a very good, I'm a Wharton certified musculoskeletal and flexibility therapist, and I have been for 20 plus years. I'm going to put the stretch routine down below. That's perfect routine for running, pre-run and post-run. And I'm going to put my other one in there in case you ever have issues with your calves and things like that, which are a little bit of a more predominant issue with regards to marathoning. Great routine to help deal with that and to help navigate that area and to help kind of get you back healthy and over, and minimizing and preventing injuries. So those I'm looking down at my training book, by the way. I want to make sure I hit all my points. And again, the long run also improves the body's ability kind of to store carbohydrates, which become more prevalent the longer you're going. Leading up to the marathon, it should be probably a little bit of a heavier dietary weight with regards to carbs. For this particular reason, on the back end, once you finish, it becomes a little bit more of a protein heavy intake to kind of speed up the recovery process for muscle repair and so on and so forth. And they're all kind of tied into the long run too. But the long run, whether you're training for the half marathon, the half mile marathon, it's important either way. Some of the most successful middle distance runners, like Peter Snell from New Zealand, I'll give you an example. He was an Olympic gold medalist in the 800 and the 1500 meters. He did marathon type training for the majority of his training. So he had a ridiculous aerobic foundation, a strength foundation, and then he was able to build everything else around it. So he built speed from strength, and the long run played a big role in that. And again, it should play a big role in it for everybody. And if you're going to do it, it's important to not only make sure that you're running the appropriate amount, but you're running it when it's appropriate too. As the marathon, if you're running 60 miles a week, then you can essentially do a 12-mile long run every week. 70, you can run 14 every week. As you start to get up a little higher, maybe it's a 2 weeks on, 1 week off thing, or an every other week thing for the long run. And that's also before you plug in your races too. Once you plug in races, things can move around. I'm also a believer in cutting back the long run the week before a race. So if you're racing, let's say week 8, and you're running whatever it is, the week prior, week 7, cutting back that long run maybe 25%. So let's say if it was 14, you cut it down to a 10 or 11 to kind of give the legs a little bit of a break to kind of leading into the next race. And that's where you can kind of cut things back without having to make a drastic cut to all the different types of training. And because the other thing with this is, periodization becomes important too. Some folks, you could be holding 70 miles a week for an extended period of time, and then you have a race and you cut it down to 45 miles. You may feel fresh, you may feel completely out of whack, and it's because your body hasn't had enough time to adjust to the significant cut in volume. Okay, just because you cut it back and you might feel fresh doesn't mean you're going to feel in sync, doesn't mean you're always going to race well. So got to keep that in mind too. It's got to be gradual on that end too, with the long run going up, and as well as the weekly volume, and its their relationship to each other. So that's kind of those are the things I wanted to stress. Particularly in high school and college, are good opportunities to run consistent long runs. Let them complement other runs in the week, like the semi-long run, which is kind of it's a significant run for me and my athletes. And I coach people from half mile all the way up to the marathon, but I generally have a semi-long run in there during the week as well. Whether, let's say, you have a 12-mile long run, the semi-long run is maybe about 9 or 10 miles. And it could be a run, from a progression from easy to steady pace, or a workout where the volume totals 9 or 10 miles, warm up and cool down included and everything. It's just a second day in a week that you're on your feet for an extended period of time, which translates nicely up to the half marathon and the marathon. So that's my long run video. I just wanted to go over some things today. Hope you found something valuable. If you did, please hit the thumbs up and please subscribe to the channel because I'm going to give a lot of running content. Always look in the description. But if you want fully detailed training programs, take a look at what's on the channel already. I've got fully detailed programs from half mile all the way up to the marathon with time goal specifics. I've got cross-country training programs, high school, college. Everything is done by the day, by the week, by the month. So you'll see how everything is laid out. And if you're going to watch any of them, watch them in their entirety. Don't pause, write stuff down, and then click off because you're going to miss a lot of important details. And I structure these videos in such a way so that the more information you get, the more you're going to know, the more you're going to understand, but the better position you're going to be in to make the best decisions possible for yourself or your athletes. So that's the goal behind all these videos, is to make you as informed as possible. So, and to help you get better, to help your athletes get better. Okay. So with that, my next video after this, I'm going to go over specific specificity in workouts, whether it be threshold, tempo, whatnot. So that's going to be a key one. So make sure you hit the bell next to it after subscribing so you don't miss that. And I'll be doing a lot more other stuff coming out. I'm going to do a half-mile series, sub 2:10, sub 2 minutes, and some other things as well. So keep an eye out for those too. Be safe, and have a great holiday, and I will talk to you next time.